Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to let you know that we have beverages available over at the beverage station. So if you want coffee or tea or water, please feel. Oh, there's no tea? Oh. What? All right, there's coffee and water. Good morning. I'm Tia Maria Smith from PA Kin Connector. On behalf of the Office of Children, Youth, and Families and PA Kin Connector, we welcome you to Empowering Kinship Families Lunch and Learn event. We hope that what we have in store for you today will help you in your kinship journey. Today's meeting will be divided into 4 sections. First, the learning section. Here, we will provide information on how to manage the new family dynamics that often result from kinship care. The next section is the value of support groups like PA Kin Connector's monthly support group, Kindred Spirits. Here, we will share the activities that help kinship caregivers share their challenges and victories, as well as learn from and support each other. The next section is Q&A with PA Kin Connector staff. Here we will answer the top questions caregivers have for us, as well as questions from our audience. And the fourth part is lunch and more. Here, in addition to a delicious meal, we will have the opportunity to connect with all the event attendees, as well as watch a video version of PA Kin Connector's Kindred Voices podcast. And today's podcast will feature the 2 stories of inspirational kinship caregivers. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our trainer, Dr. Joseph Crumley, a multi-award-winning kinship care expert. Dr. Crumley's experience and accomplishments are vast and too many to list, so I will highlight just a few. First, Dr. Crumley has consulted with both domestic and international agencies, including Casey Family Services, the University of China, and the United Nations. Dr. Crumley has also written 2 books, Relatives Raising Children and Transracial Adoptions in Foster Care. In addition, Dr. Crumley has online kinship training courses sponsored by Ann E. Casey and the University of Pennsylvania School of Social Work. Finally, Dr. Crumley has been a mentor and advisor to PA Kin Connector for the past 5 years. His wisdom and guidance in helping us understand and service kinship's families has been amazing. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Crumley.
Thank you, Tia Maria. I guess the most important part of that introduction was having been working with Pennsylvania Kin Connector for the last 4 or 5 years. That has been so exciting, and thank you for having me present. Appreciate that. I'm going to be talking about family dynamics. And when I think about family dynamics, I'm looking at that as one of the major strengths in kinship families. And the reason why I think family dynamics is such a strength and needs to be celebrated, especially during this month, is because it's the family dynamics of kinship caregivers that keep children out of foster care. By family dynamics, I'm talking about the ability of kinship families and caregivers to assume the new roles and the responsibilities and the relationships that keep children out of care. If they did not assume those new roles and relationships, children would end up being placed. And that's what caregivers do. They just step up. It's unplanned. They didn't anticipate it. It's something that's not anticipated, and then they assume these new roles, these new responsibilities, these new relationships when birth parents aren't able to assume them on behalf of their children. I'll be more specific. In 24 hours, a caregiver is able to find space, clothing, and food, just from a knock on the door and a phone call. In a matter of days, they're able to find clothing, they're able to find daycare, they're able to find schools. In a matter of weeks, they're able to set up appointments for medical care, for health care, for counseling, and they're doing it and they're doing it without it being prepared. And to me, that's because of family dynamics. Being able to assume those new roles, those new relationships, those new responsibilities without any preparation at all. So I'm going to talk about 2 things. One, how family dynamics make this possible in kinship families. And 2, how caregivers need to be involved in helping families adapt to the new dynamics. Because that's the challenge. It's a strength because they can do it and make those changes, but the challenge is how can they adapt and how can they help the families adapt to the new roles. So I'm going to talk about family dynamics, and I'm going to start by asking you a question. Based on your experience as either caregivers or as professionals or as providers, who's usually providing the kinship care? Aunts, uncles, grandparents, who are you seeing? Yep, that's what the research is telling us. It's usually grandparents. Is it one grandparent or two grandparents? What are we seeing? Single-headed households or two-parent households? What do you think we're seeing?
I think it's one.
Okay, yep, you're absolutely right. That's what the research is saying, and that's what caregivers are telling us, that it's usually a grandparent, and it's a single-headed grandparent. Is it grandmother or grandfather? What do you think we're finding out? Grandmom, yeah. So that's what we're seeing. Grandparents primarily, grandmothers specifically, and they're usually doing it as a single head of household. So I'm going to have you see a genogram. This is a diagram, basically. Genograms are diagrams of families, and this is basically a diagram of what you just described. At the top, if it's a grandparent, underneath the grandparent are her children, which are the aunt and the uncle and the birth parent. And the aunt, the uncle, and the birth parent, what's their relationship to each other based on this genogram? Siblings, absolutely. Okay. The aunts and the uncles, the birth parent, they have children, and what's the relationship of the children to each other? Cousins, absolutely. Okay. When that grandparent decides to raise that grandchild, which I identified as IC, that's the child that's going into care. When that grandparent decides to raise that grandchild as their birth child, where does the child's position shift? Up, down, over, which way? Up. Lisa's pointing me up. All right, okay, all right, let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's the first move. Okay, all right, yeah, but it shifted up to that line with the aunts and the uncles and the birth parent. Why is it okay to put the birth child on the same level as the aunt and the uncle? Well, let me phrase it differently. What does the aunt and the uncle and the birth parent have in common now with the child that's now in kinship care? What do they have in common?
They're being parented by the grandparent?
The grandparent is what they have in common, right? What they have in common is being parented by the grandparent. Now, granted, aunts and uncles and birth parents, they still have their own separate and different relationships with the child, but what they all have in common is being parented by the grandparent. Now, here's what I'd like you to do. This is where you get to appreciate the dynamics and the changes in relationships. And we're going to do that by me asking you a question. Again, based on your experience as either a caregiver or as a provider, how might that aunt or uncle feel about that child being raised by their mother? Now ask that again. How might they feel about that child being raised by their mother?
I know in my situation, my oldest daughter, which is my granddaughter's aunt, she is very supportive and helpful
Okay.
with me, yeah.
So it can be a positive response. Okay. Has anybody, what else has other people seen in terms of responses? One's a positive. Anybody else see anything different?
Maybe a little jealousy,
Oh,
almost.
okay. So it could possibly be a little bit of jealousy. Yes.
Resentment?
Oh, could be some resentment as well. What could the resentment be from?
Maybe the grandparents are raising the child differently than they were raised, giving them, more attention. They're not working sometimes. At the time when they're raising the grandchild, they're not working, and they were working when they were raising them, so they're not able to provide them with that individual time and attention that they they wish that they had growing up.
Excellent. It might sound like this. You're letting them get away with things that you didn't let me. That's how you might hear it in the family. Or you're doing things for them that you didn't do for me. So you might hear it in families that way. Okay. So you've got that continuum of I'm there to be there for you, to support you, or you could have the jealousy, or you could have the resentment. So, and when I said that comment, guess who's catching it? Guess who's hearing that comment of you're letting them get away with things that I didn't, you're giving them more. Who's that conversation to? Who are they saying that to? The grandparent. Grandmom catches it. Okay. See, this is where you begin to see it looks different from foster care and adoption. This is where caregivers get it different. See, because foster parents and adoptive parents, they don't hear that conversation. You know, you raised them different from me. They didn't know each other. So there was no pre-existing relationship. In kinship care, it is. So a foster parent and adoptive parent's not going to hear, you raised them better than me, you letting them get away with things that I didn't, because they weren't raised by that grandparent. So that's the kind of challenge that a caregiver is going to get that foster and adoptive parents don't get. That's one of the things that makes caregivers unique. So now I'm going to take it in another direction. So we've got aunts and uncles, and you can get that positive response or you can get that resentment. Okay, so you've got a continuum of responses. Now I'm going to go to the birth parent. What might that birth parent be saying to their mother, the grandparent, about raising their child? Give me that response. Give me that conversation. I'm seeing some people smiling already in the audience.
Mine said, I don't like how you raised me, and I don't want you to raise my child.
Okay. Could you say that again, please?
My son said, who was caught up in an addiction, which is why I went for custody and had his son, I don't like how you raised me, and I don't want you to raise my son.
Okay. All right. That was real personal. And she did it with a smile, but I'm feeling the emotion at the same time. Okay. I wish that camera could have gone to you. It was just so special the way you were able to say that. And then with the feeling at the same time. See, what you just heard is the emotional experiences that caregivers feel that foster and adoptive parents don't feel. But with the caregiver, so that's one response. All right. So there's another response. What was your response from your daughter?
In my situation, the birth parent, she was caught up with addiction, and while she was still alive, she always told me that I would make a better mother. She is. She was very low self-esteem. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, go ahead.
So
please.
she knows she's in good hands.
Oh, that's precious. Okay, all right. We have a caregiver whose daughter knew that her children were in good hands and better hands, and you were able to find that out before she was passed. Okay, so I hope everybody can appreciate the continuum of responses of appreciation to resentment. Okay, yes.
In healing, when he was clean, he thanked me. And I'm once again now raising one of his other children that's now almost 20 months old, and now there's gratitude. He's incarcerated. And so now round two.
Round
that I
two,
didn't
I like the way you
expect
said
to
that.
happen,
Yeah.
is very different, and it's led with gratitude.
Right, okay. So you can have a continuum of responses with the same person in kinship care, which has to do with their growth and their appreciation. And it's not like there's anything's wrong with the birth parent in that initial reaction either, but that was their growth, their acceptance, their understanding. So in kinship care, that caregiver can have a continuum of responses from thank you, I appreciate you, to resentment, I don't want you to have them. And that same person can come back and say, thank you. Okay. So, and again, unique to kinship care, and it's because of that pre-existing relationship that they have with the birth parent that foster and adoptive parents don't have. Okay. So that's, again, what's unique. So when we look at the birth parent with the grandparent, which is the birth parent with their mom or dad, now I'm going to take you to another dyad. Y'all are right with me now. Okay. I'm going to take you to another dyad. Okay. Y'all are good therapists. Y'all would be great therapists. I'm just listening to what you're saying and how you're listening to those conversations. All right, here's another one now. What might the birth parent be saying to the child about being raised by grandma? Does anybody remember or have any idea what that birth parent might be saying or could have said? Yes.
She's raising you, but she's not your parent. I'm your parent.
Ooh, that's the dialogue. I'm still mom. I'm still dad. Say that again, Troy. I like the way you said it better than the way I'm saying it.
Even though your grandmother or grandfather is raising you now, I'm still your parent.
That's right. Even though mom or grandmom might be raising you, I'm still your parent. Okay. And it could be out of a competition, or it could be supportive, but they just want to know, they want the children to still know their place. Okay. Any other responses that, when you think about what the birth parent may have said to the children, or the impression, because sometimes it's not words, what was the impression that they were getting? Yes.
The father of my granddaughter
Okay.
is still very involved
Right.
in her life, even though he's not in the area, and he's dealing with his own recovery.
Okay.
But he still calls her and sees her when he can, and he's very supportive of me. He's always thanking me for, I'm basically raising her myself
Okay.
at this point. Yeah.
And what do you think he communicates to your granddaughter when he talks about you or her being there with you?
Oh, well, he's very, like I said, he's very, he's like a son to me.
Okay.
And he's very supportive.
So so your grandchild sees a parent who is supportive.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's important because even though they may not use the words, there's a communication going on between him and his daughter, and that communication is, I like your grandma, and she's doing a good job. And you're right, children pick that up. If dad likes her, then I'm going to like her too. So he's communicating that grandmom's okay. So that's the kind of dialogue, and I didn't even think about it, it's nonverbal, that can go on between that birth parent and that child. Okay. Now, sometimes the dialogue can go in other directions. Has anybody heard different kinds of dialogues? Yes.
I've heard birth parents kind of trash the grandparents, say bad things to the children.
Yeah. I mean, that example Troy gave about I'm still your mom, that conversation could also go on between the birth parent and the child, just like that conversation could go on between the birth parent and the grandparent. I'm still her mom. He could be saying to that child, I'm still your mom. And it can come off either positive or it can come across negative. Okay, depending on what that relationship is like. So the birth parent could be saying to the child, I'm still mom, I'm still dad. Or they could be saying things like, listen to mom, listen to dad. Okay, they could be saying things like, if you don't like what they said, check in with me. Okay, so it could be a lot of different kinds of dialogues that can be going on between the child. And you were smiling. What were you thinking?
Well, I had a little different dynamic
Okay.
with my grandson. So he had a stepmom that wanted custody. It was after their divorce, and she was in another state. And so she was active in his life, and she wanted custody of him. And so while her intentions were good, I believe, she would say to him, Grandma shouldn't be there. She's a grandma. I should be there.
Ooh.
That is where a mother should be, not a grandmother. And so it made it more difficult for
Okay.
him because he didn't want to move back to North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
And so he wanted to stay in Pennsylvania, which is where he came with his dad. So we had that dynamic of a stepmom.
Right, okay. I love what you said. The dynamic of being split, the dynamic of being caught in the middle.
He was very much caught in the middle.
Yeah, okay. And the dynamic of having to choose. And then he couldn't share, was he able to share those feelings with the stepmother? Or did he have to keep them to himself? And
He did not.
Okay.
And so when he was visiting the stepmom and his half-sister, he would want to be there. And then when he was home, he wanted to be home. And so it was very difficult. He was 12 when
Oh, wow.
I got custody. And then at the age of 16, gave him an option, and he chose to stay. Which then, once she found that out, that he had the option, it kind of shifted a little bit. And I think we all did the best we could. But
Yeah.
it was an added dynamic because there was an active stepmom that then wanted custody.
Right. So you took it to a whole nother level. I've been talking about birth parents. You took it to the level of step parents. Okay. So again, that's a whole nother dynamic, of children getting caught in the middle, of having to choose, of having to make choices, being afraid to express their feelings because they don't want to hurt someone. Okay. And then you're the one who catches it because all of it comes out in your home, all of it comes out in the interactions with you. In other words, you got to do the damage control, when he's feeling that. So again, unique to kinship care. So, okay, all right. Now, as we know, many times, children don't always go into the care of grandparents. Sometimes children go into the care of an aunt or uncle. Now, in this diagram, we have the child going into the care of an aunt. What might the child be saying to the cousin who moved in about now living with them? What do you think that conversation might be like? Can anybody imagine?
Maybe.
Child has moved in with the aunt. What might that conversation sound like between the two cousins? Because the cousins are now acting like what with each other?
Things.
Siblings. Okay. Yeah. What might they be saying? What might that sound like?
Maybe something like, "You're not my brother or sister, so don't call her mom."
Say that again, Alex. That was great. Yeah.
You're really not my brother or sister, so I don't like it that you call her mom.
Yeah. Don't call her mom. Yeah. Don't call him dad. You're not my brother and sister. They're not your parent. Okay. Now, there could be a little honeymoon period in there for a while. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're here. And you're smiling again. I've got to ask you, what's your name? I'm sorry. No, maybe I shouldn't because we're on tape. I want to keep it confidential. Yeah.
I'm smiling because with recently getting guardianship of my youngest granddaughter, who's now almost 20 months, my daughters, who are sisters to the birth parent,
Right.
didn't feel that I should have to raise another child because of their brother's addiction. And there's been discussion, should one of them step up, would that be a better environment for her than to be with me? And so we've had discussion within our family. But where we are now is that she's with me, and if we have to change goals from reunification, she will stay with me. But she has wonderful access to both families who she spends time with, and the cousins at this point are very nurturing and endearing and protective. So I'm hoping that we're able to tap into the best of both worlds.
Okay. So those cousins have accepted her as a sibling.
No,
No.
because she's with me.
Oh, she's with you, but if we have to make that move,
If we have to make that move,
right, to the other
if for some
family.
reason I couldn't, they would then take
Right,
it on.
exactly.
We've had the discussion, and it's a very heavy discussion.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Mhm. That's just a perfect example about the strengths of family dynamics, where all of a sudden a cousin can start acting like a sister or a brother, or a grandparent can start acting like a mom or a dad. Okay, it's those abilities to make those changes in roles and relations. That's a perfect example that I'm talking about. And I'm impressed with the fact that your family already has a backup family. Okay, right now you can relate to her as a cousin, but if she moves into our family, you're now going to have to be able to relate to her as a sibling, and already doing that preparation. What's so great about what you just said is I was talking about how caregivers help families adapt. What you did was a perfect example. That's how caregivers help families adapt, getting them prepared for those new roles, those new relationships, and that's just what you did. But I'll save that for part 2, though, so I'll get back to that, okay? But that's a perfect example of how caregivers do it, how they make it work. So, okay, what might the child be saying to the aunt, their mother, about the cousin moving in? What might that conversation sound like?
Why are they here? Why aren't they with their own parents?
Okay. Why are they here? Why aren't they with their own parents? How about when are they leaving? Oh, share. This caregiver is laughing again, folks. When she laughs, that's a cue. So let's get right on her. Please share. What happened?
I'm sorry, I just have, because in the
You're having
situation,
flashbacks. That's what you're doing here
Sometimes you
in your
just
memories. It's excellent. Yeah.
don't know how long it's going to be.
Oh,
And
wow.
both of my situations, I thought short term.
Right.
I thought that the birth parents would have an awakening and be like, oh my gosh, I've lost my child. I'm going to do whatever I can. And so the expectation of a short term with my grandson, it ended up being ongoing, and he's now 21. So it just makes me laugh because we don't know how long it could be, long or short. How long they're staying, only God knows.
Right. What I'm hearing is that child asking, when are they leaving? She got put on the spot. And caregivers are constantly put on the spot, about, I don't know, and they look ambivalent. They look like they don't know what they're doing. The family's getting frustrated. And your family, they've got to come up with plan B, in case that the child doesn't stay with you, but it's all because of, I don't know. And you're right, you either cry or you laugh, and the kids can put you in that position. And that's what happened with this child. Somebody's asked you, when is he leaving? I don't know. So again, that's kind of, unique to kinship care. And I was getting ready to say, and what does the aunt say to the child? I don't know. You already answered it. Right. You gave me an example of what that dialogue can go both ways. Okay. So I guess my whole point is that, okay, all right, I'm going to ask you a question about a diagram that's not up there, because y'all are sharp, So do a visual. This is up here is the birth parent. From the birth parent, draw 2 lines, and these 2 lines are to their siblings. Okay, to their children who are siblings. Now imagine one of the siblings going into the care of the other sibling. You with me? Okay. What might the siblings be saying to each other, especially the one that's now in the care of the older sibling? What might that conversation sound like? And it's a continuum.
Just because you're taking care of me doesn't mean you can order me around or.
Thank you. Right. You can't tell me what to do. Just because you're taking care of me. Okay. Now the continuum of that could be, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have a good time. Okay, so it could be the other continuum, but at the point, right, somebody's starting to give orders. No, you can't tell me what to do. I remember when you snuck out the window, okay, and now you're going to tell me not to. I'm kind of joking, but those are the kind of things that can happen in kinship care. Because of that pre-existing relationship. That's unique to kinship care. It doesn't happen in foster care and adoption because they didn't grow up together, okay? But in kinship, they've got the history, they know the stories. Okay, all right, go back to that diagram again. Now imagine what the mother might be saying to the child who's now the caregiver. What does that conversation sound like? Mom's talking to the child who's caring for the younger sibling. What does that dialogue sound like?
Well, sometimes, Dr. Crumley, the moms don't mind that the sibling is being maternal and taking all of the responsibilities.
Okay. So how does that conversation sound like?
Good job.
All right, good
Keep it up.
job. Yeah, go ahead and do it. Right, you're in charge. Okay, all right. Or give me the continuum of that conversation. What might that sound like?
I'm still their mother.
I'm still the mother. Right. I'm still the mother. In fact, it could even go so far as, and I tell you what to do. Yeah, I love the nodding. Yeah, how about that? Yeah. Can you see the sibling like being shocked? What? Wait a minute, I'm the adult here. No, you're still, finish that. You're still what? You're still my kid. Exactly. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because in kinship care, we're now starting to see more siblings stepping into the role of caregivers. Okay, so for the professionals watching this, please be aware of the unique dynamics in kinship care when we're starting to talk about siblings providing kinship care, because that's a unique conversation. Siblings saying to sibling, we're going to have a good time, but you can't tell me what to do, and the mother's still seeing them having a role in that situation and telling that sibling, I'm still your mom, you need to do what I'm saying. Okay, y'all are right with me, aren't you? Yeah, okay, all right, I'm gonna muddy it up a little more now, okay. What might mom be now saying to the sibling that's in care? What might that conversation sound like? And give me the continuum.
Listen to me and not your sister or brother.
That's right. How about that? I'm still mom. Listen to me, not your sister. Okay. Or the other continuum could be, what does that conversation sound like?
Listen to your sister or brother.
That's right. Listen to your sister or your brother. When they speak for me. Okay. So that's another conversation that can happen in kinship care. Now here's okay. Here's what's happening in kinship care. Remember all those diagrams and the boxes moving all around in the different conversations? This is what happens in kinship care. In kinship care, you are changing pre-existing roles and responsibilities. This is your checklist. And this is a checklist for caregivers as well as professionals. So if you're a caregiver, you need to know, here's your checklist. What has changed in my family? And your checklist is relationships, responsibilities, roles, who tells who what to do, accountability, who reports to who, because that's all shifted. Power has now shifted. All of a sudden, that grandparent has more power than the birth parent. When before the child came into the home, the parent had the power. But now it's shifted. Status has shifted in terms of who's more important. To the child, the attachment was with the birth parent. And now this child, I'll ask you this. Who's the child, when the child attaches to the caregiver, who is that child now attaching to as a parent in kinship care? The caregiver. Yeah, it's that obvious, isn't it? Yeah. So that's the change. See, the reason why I said it is because caregivers still think that they're grandparents. But hold on to that thought. I'm going to get right back to that, okay? All right? But look at everything that has changed. Authority has changed, and even loyalty has changed in kinship care. And it's changed because of this. In kinship care, family members assume they have the same rights, entitlements, and privileges they had prior to the child coming into the home. Does that make sense? Yeah, you're still supposed to love me like I'm your child. How do you hear that from the birth parent? When the birth parent is talking to the relative caregiver, their mom or their dad, how do you hear that? Or how have folks heard that? When they want you to love them the same way you did before the child came into their home. Anyone have a conversation or know what that might sound like? Yes, please.
So in our current situation, my son will be doing parole, and he thought it would be nice if he could just come and live with me and his daughter.
Yes.
And so I was thankful that we're formal kinship care this time, where last time I was informal, and so I had to make decisions where this time I have the support of the child welfare system and CYS and the agency. But he did not take no very well.
Okay.
And so we've had to have that conversation several times that no, you can't come here. And he felt that he should be able to come and live with me. And I know this time around I have to keep my home a safe haven for the children. So his children are coming first ahead of him.
All right. That's the Achilles heel. That's what makes it hard for kinship caregivers. That's what makes it hard for the birth parent. Because it's not like he's a bad person, but he remembers that when he was first. He remembers when you put him first. Oh, don't do. I understand. Yeah, see, he still remembers when you cared for him first. So that's why it was natural for him to think, I can come back home. And that mom's going to want me to come back home. So for you to have to say no, yeah. So he felt betrayed, and that's the hard part of kinship care. See, foster parents and adoptive parents don't feel bad, you see, because they didn't have that pre-existing relationship, but you did. And you had to say, no, he can't come back home. And that the roles and relationships, because he remembers you knew me first. How is he doing with that now? Is he able to kind of accept that?
No.
Okay, all right.
We had to have the conversation again last night.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And it's going to be, see, now I'm talking about how caregivers make it work. Yeah, it's that conversation. The first time, it's that conversation tonight. One of the big parts of caregivers' job is helping the family adjust to the changes. That's what it is. So that's a perfect example. And it takes time. Okay. So that's your work. That's the work for kinship caregivers. Is when we talk about how to make it work, it's helping the family adjust to the new roles, the new positions, and your position and your role, because now you have to tell other people they come first, especially if that's your child. That's the work there. Okay. And your checklist is these things. Oh, okay. Kinship care, is kinship care new? No. Okay. So all these things I have up here are not new. Caregivers have been doing this without the professionals, but all this does is this is the checklist of the things that you automatically and instinctively change and do. Okay? And for the professionals that are watching this, this is your checklist as well, to see how they're going through this list. And if they get stuck, for example now, hopefully, this is a perfect example. You've got the county helping you now. They're the ones saying no. That's how we as professionals can help support the caregivers. We have to help them establish their boundaries, establish their roles, and use their authority. And we use our authority to support them. So yeah, he's angry. He may be angry with you. I'm being presumptuous, assuming you might be angry. But he may have some feelings about you, but you can say to the agency, and the agency can step in and say, no, this is our decision. Our priority is your child, not you at this point. And you can become the heavy, and you can say to the birth parent, if you have an issue, you need to come to us. You know, because even if your mother said yes, we'd still tell her, oh, look at her face, y'all. She's smiling now. Yeah, that's what we can do for you. Even if she had said yes, we would still have to tell her no. You know, and you like being able to say that. It's nice to be able to say, I really would if I could, but it's that agency. So yes, we need to be, see, I'm seeing the professionals in the audience. Yeah, we need to be the fall person. We need to take that off of caregivers, okay? You know, so that they can balance that pressure, okay? Because it takes a lot to have to say no, especially when you have that pre-existing relationship. So that's the work right there. And here's what you have to look at too. Realignments. Realignments are when those boxes are shifting. How do the boxes shift? Put your names of the children in the boxes, your sons and daughters' names in the boxes if you're a caregiver, and how has it shifted? So you want to see how the realignment has occurred. That diagram could also tell you where the resistance may come from. So caregivers, you do it instinctively, but caregivers, if you can do a little diagram of your family, it also will tell you where the resistance is going to come from. Because when he wanted to come back for parole, he wanted to move that child back down under him, and he wanted himself to be your priority. So that's what happened in that diagram. And you saw it come. Did you see it coming? Did you know he was going to understand that you were going to say no? Did he?
So he didn't, because prior to her coming into care, we had talked about it as a possibility, because his older son that lived with me has since moved out. So we talked about it as a possibility, and then when she came into my guardianship, I talked to my caseworkers, who explained that then that would not be kinship care. And it was a relief, because we did a 3-generation household before I had custody of my grandson, and it was very difficult and had some traumatic situations. So I was thankful that they were saying no, and since I've been able to tap into that past history and say, yes, they're saying no, but I'm also saying no, and here is why, because this is what's going to be best for all of us, and Amira comes first.
Right. So that diagram, you did all in your head.
Well,
You did it instinctively, not that you had the lines and the boxes, you know.
It took a little bit of pulling the past out and taking a look at it.
Look at the
to be able to
past,
talk it
exactly.
out with people.
Right.
Like, I didn't do it on my own.
Oh, okay.
I've had
Gotcha.
people to talk it out with me to be
There
able
you
to
go.
see what would be best moving forward,
Right.
that I could then be steadfast on.
Right. Professionals, do you hear how we have to support?
I didn't do any of this on my own.
Yeah, gotcha. You're right. And that's where we as professionals need to know how to support. Or friends of the family. It doesn't have to always be professionals, you know, to kind of like do that support, to have that conversation, to see that diagram, to look at what was going to change. This will tell you where the resistance is too, because he wanted to move the boxes. He wanted things to come back. And if you've got a diagram of your family, you can kind of like see, you know, if you're taking in a second child, what that's going to be like for the family, how people are going to feel. Sabotage. Yeah, this can even tell you where the sabotage might come from. If you've got a diagram, a visual diagram of your family in terms of who might be telling the children, you don't have to listen to her. I'm still mom. Those are those conversations. Okay. Collusion. Okay. Because now it's funny because I've seen, and I'm sure many of you have seen this as well, where the children may not think it's fair for their mother to be providing kinship care. And there can be collusion. We don't think it's right. It shouldn't happen. It's not fair. Okay. Now, it's interesting in the example here that we had around collusion, that was positive collusion, where mom shouldn't have to do this, it's not fair, so we're going to step up and take over if mom burns out. So it's being able to have that. So collusion could be a positive or negative, or it could be, we're going to try to get mom out of this because mom is just making it easy for my brother and sister, and they're just getting away with murder. It's not right, and then sabotage. And then this will tell you also where you need to get buy-in to in your family. Buy-in is, the example of buy-in is where the birth parent says to the child, listen to mom, she speaks for me. You got buy-in then, because they're supporting that caregiver's authority. The buy-in can go because before it might be you don't have to listen to them, but when you can get them to say, when grandmom speaks, she speaks to me, speaks for me, then you're getting buy-in, okay? And having that conversation with members of the family helps with the buy-in. Please you have to let the children call me mom. You have to let them call me dad. Will you not get angry with them when you hear them call me mom or dad? Not tell them that that's something that they shouldn't do. That's buy-in, okay? And in the losses, the other thing that caregivers need to do in terms of how to make this work is recognize the losses, because it happens all over the place, okay? I love that example of your son. You recognize his loss, and that's why you're going to keep going back. And he sounds attached to you. I've been replaced. So that's how you'll help heal. I think there was a word used by somebody. Yeah, he's got to heal and accept the fact that, somebody's taken your place, and I have to do that, and that's a consequence of what you did. It's their turn now. So it's those kinds of conversations that you have to have. And maybe even the conversation of, if you have to decide that you can't take care of the youngest one, I can't do it anymore. I have my boundaries. What's our backup plan going to be? How we're going to make that work? Because it's a lot of losses, a lot of different ways. So helping the birth parent recognize the loss, and even with the siblings, I know you don't want him to call me mom because that's like sharing me with somebody else. Yeah, I understand. So it's recognizing that loss, as well. You got to share your bedroom. I understand. I truly understand, So it's recognizing that loss, and then letting them know that you value their sacrifice, because they're sacrificing just like you. Caregivers have to do that. I'll ask you this question. When you ask family members to do things for the children that you're caring for, who are they really doing it for? I see the smile again. Yeah, go ahead. No, it's please. You don't feel like you're monopolizing.
Both of my daughters really step up their husbands, their children to really.
And who are they
support.
doing it for?
They're doing it for me.
Yeah.
They said, Mom, you don't have to do this, but when I said, but I'm doing this, I feel called, I can. So they do whatever they can to support me,
right,
and to support her.
Yeah. In kinship care, I'd like to believe they were doing it for the children that you're caring for, but they're really doing it for you, out of loyalty to you, out of attachment to you, out of support for you, and the reward for them is your recognition of them doing it for you. That's how you help them do it. That's the reward. So they need to know that, thank you, I know you're doing it for me. They need to hear that. That's their nurturance. So that's how caregivers can help families adapt to it, letting other family members know that I know you're doing it for me, and thank you for doing it for me, and I couldn't do this by myself. So that's another way of helping you're nodding. What were you thinking? Yeah.
The same reason how,
Oh, we need you.
I have family that's very supportive, friends that are very supportive. My daughter is, she'll text me, say, hey, Mom, I'll take Gia. Need a break? or someone else will,
Right.
or let me know, because I do. I mean, I'm in my late 50s and trying, raise my almost 5-year-old granddaughter, and I
Yes.
had her since she was 18 months old. So it's tough, and I can't do things like I did when I was younger. And so, yeah, I'm very appreciative what they do for me, because I couldn't do it without them,
Right. So, and that's a loss for them too. That's a sacrifice, not just necessarily a loss, but knowing that you appreciate it is what keeps them doing it, and that's how caregivers can help families adapt. Okay, and Joy, go ahead. No, go ahead. Joy. Yeah. And your daughter, is it your birth daughter that's passed? She's passed.
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
all right.
Actually, the 29th of this month,
Okay.
she would have been turning 30.
Oh, okay.
So she, the 30th will be her 3-year anniversary that she passed.
3 years.
Yeah.
So the child's been with you for 5 years already?
Yeah.
Yeah,
She was
okay.
about 8, yeah.
Right. So the child was with you before mom passed. Then.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Only reason why I'm getting into all that detail is because loss. How's the loss been? How have you helped? You've had to help people with that loss. So how did you do?
I had a lot going on. My daughter, she had gotten in trouble, and she was arrested. And then I had gotten a phone call, from Children and Youth Services, saying, basically asking me if I could be, be her guardianship.
All right.
And I said, of course, I'm not going to let her just go, off to anybody. So that's when I took over. And then, of course, my daughter, she had gone to rehab. And evidently 30 days is not enough for someone who's addicted.
Right.
And she had come home, and she was able to see her daughter for one day. And she spent the day with her, and then she put her down for her nap. And she lied to me, and she took off, and she went and got drugs.
Okay.
Shortly after that, she had passed away, actually on her birthday, the morning of her birthday.
On the birthday. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that, because again, how you help families adapt to the loss, how caregivers do that, is doing just what you're doing here. Going through that grief and what that mourning was like and what that loss is like, and now you've got a 5-year-old child now in the home, and somebody's got to deal with the question, why am I? Where is mom?
She's actually just a few months ago or so, she got to the age where she asked where her mommy was.
Okay.
And I had told her her mommy's up in heaven, and that you'll see her someday.
Oh,
But she refers to her mommy as the sky mommy. And she does talk about her mommy every day. And I truly believe her mother does come to her in her dreams.
Okay.
Because she'll say things that, she'll say, my mommy said this to me, and my mommy said I can't have that. And my mom, So,
Okay.
and spiritually,
Yeah.
I
Gotcha.
believe she does have that connection with her mother.
Okay. Right. Okay, that's an example of what I'm talking about. In terms of loss and how caregivers have to help children with the loss and the grief. So, okay, Troy, you were going to add something. Thank you for sharing that.
I was just going to say, I know it sounds like a cliche, but it is true. It truly takes a village to raise a child.
Right.
So caregivers need to be surrounded by people who care and have a support system, to be able to lift them up,
Right.
so they can continue to do what they do. So.
Okay. Yeah.
And
That's
I
a
just
nice
wanna-
follow-up.
And I just want to thank every caregiver here for all they do to step up.
Yeah, how
Absolutely.
about that? Oh, thank you, Troy. Troy, tell them who you are. Yeah.
I am the Caregiver Support Program Coordinator for the PA Department of Aging, so,
Okay.
yeah. So,
All right, so that's the state talking to y'all, thanking y'all. That's why I wanted to tell them who was thanking you. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now here's another diagram. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right. We know this one, right? That's where the child is shifted. And I'm getting ready to show you another diagram, and I want you to tell me what happened. What just happened in that diagram? Oh, she said adoption. That's incredible. Okay, the reason why you see me reacting that way is because that represents whose needs come first in that diagram now? Thank you. That's what that diagram represents. And the ultimate example of when the needs take precedent to birth parents is adoption, right? You are now legally responsible for that child as if they're your children, right? So yeah, adoption or guardianship. It could be informal, all right? It doesn't have to always be formal, but you have decided that that need comes first over that of the birth parent, and that can happen too. So that's another shift that I just think it's important to know that happens in kinship care and that caregivers need to be aware of. That can be very challenging, and that means you have to make choices, and it's very challenging also for the children as well, okay, in terms of you've got to, again, how do you help folks adapt? Those children are going to have to get comfortable with the fact. I have to share this example with you. I did some training with judges. And the judges in the training had asked me, why aren't caregivers happy after they go through the adoption ceremony? And I said, well, what are you talking about? Well, when I have adoption with adults and with parents that aren't related to the children, they bring in balloons, they bring in cake, ice cream, they're taking pictures of me. But the caregivers, after I finish the adoption ceremonies, they look so sad. Do you have an explanation for that, folks? Yeah. And the judges needed to understand because that has happened, and that could be a relief, but at the same time, it can be very symbolic of what for that caregiver. Anybody want to answer? Symbolic of what? Or a reminder of what?
It's a reminder that they're taking the children from their kids.
Yes. Yeah.
Like they've ripped the family apart in a way.
Tia Marie, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that I wrecked the family. That I'm taking them from the birth parents. For some caregivers, I've even talked to them about feeling glad and relieved, but at the same time feeling like they're a failure. That I did something wrong. Or the betrayal. So I say that only because that diagram in terms of loyalty shifting, caregivers have to be aware of that. Yeah, Joe.
I also feel that grandparents can experience grief at that point, as well as the child can experience grief.
Wow.
Because the
Okay,
child
Jill.
is losing at times that birth parent as their caregiver, and the grandparent is losing their child as their immediate.
That's right.
Care,
Okay.
who they need to give that care to. So
Okay.
it can be an exciting time for
Yes.
adoption, but it also can be a feeling of grief for both the child and the grandparent.
Right, exactly. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Dynamic in that my grandson we just had the discussion a few months ago. He lost a grandma. So we were buddies, and we would drive to North Carolina, and we would visit and do all the fun stuff. And then when I became his guardian, and I was always Graham because I was Graham before, but trying to find that balance.
And when you became mom, right?
Right. And trying not to be mom. And then in the end, towards the latter years, I decided I was grandma before and I'd be grandma after, so I'm going to err on the grandma side. But we did talk about it where he acknowledged that he felt that loss of losing me as his grandma.
How old is he?
He's now 21, and he was 12 when he came to live with me.
Oh, so he was sharing you at 21 what he was feeling at 12.
And even through the continuum of
Wow.
growing up with
Okay.
other grandchildren,
Right.
and the difference of the relationship than that ours was compared to theirs.
His other cousins.
Yes.
Okay. All right, folks. Yeah, and then when you look at how do you help him cope with that? Yeah, it is a loss for again, it's a relief, it's a strength because you can do it, but at the same time, it is a loss. It's a challenge because you have to help somebody adjust to, you stepped up to be the mom, but then there was a trade-off. You lost being the grandparent. So how do you live with that, and how do you help the child live with that as well? Okay, all right. Well, let me open it up for questions that people might have from the audience. I felt like I was asking more questions of y'all. This has been my Q&A for the last hour. We did a total reversal here. So okay, all right. Oh, well, this has been so good. Thank you. I'm not good at endings, okay? I should tell you that right now. After all these years, So somebody's going to have to step up here and tell me what to do, All right. Can I stop now, or? Okay.
Yes,
See,
you may
Maria's
stop,
good at
Dr.
being a
Crumley.
boss. She said, "Yeah, stop, Joe. Just stop." So, okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. And yeah. Troy. Yeah. Troy.
Not a question, Dr. Crumley. Just wanted to comment, just to thank you, for all you've done over the years, and even to this very moment, just
Thank you.
This insightful information and just helping families to learn how to deal with the challenges that they're facing. So thank you for your dedication and service.
Thank you. I didn't expect that. That's what that's all about, So
And
thank you.
also, Dr. Crumbly, I come here today wearing two hats. So I also work for the state with the Department of Office of Children, Youth, and Families. I have the pleasure of working with Tia Maria and her
What's your
team
name?
as well. My name is Diane Michael.
Oh, Diane.
So thank you. Not
That's our boss, y'all.
No,
I just found out who
No,
I was
I'm a
talking
partner.
to.
I'm your partner.
Oh, okay. You're being nice.
Partner, yes. There's been much work done in Pennsylvania, and we have much to do, and certainly honored to be here with all of you. And on behalf of Pennsylvania and the office, want to thank each and every one of you for being here, and you for your dedication to the families and the children, and all of those that benefit from your work and your passion and your sharing.
No, thank you. Okay. All right.
Pennsylvania King Connector as one of our 3 navigators. My academic background is in counseling, and I'm certified as a support group leader by the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I'm here to talk to you today about some of the benefits of participating and belonging to support groups. But I know what you're all thinking. What's up with the backpack? It's a little out of place. Now, we'll get to that, but be patient. First, I want to hear from every one of you. When you think about support groups, what comes to mind? What are some of your preconceptions, maybe misconceptions, whether it's from Hollywood, from the media, maybe a friend or family you've known that's attended a support group? What do you guys think about support groups? Either the positive or maybe some of the negative. Lisa.
In Hollywood, you think of it as kumbaya, everybody's hugging each other and crying, and they portray it negatively.
Okay, so a little bit too positive when it comes to everyone coming together, and it's just this big, kumbaya. Tia Maria?
I just think of it as everyday people helping each other based on their own personal experiences.
Wonderful. That's a great definition of a support group. Anyone else? Maybe some examples of support groups that come to mind. Yes, Troy?
Is this on? Okay. I look at support groups as a group of people who might have a common life experience, and they come together to try to uplift one another and help each other walk on their life journey together.
Sure, well said. Maybe some examples like Alcoholics Anonymous or Grief Share, that people come together for a common purpose. Now, before I move on to the next part, maybe I'll just share a little bit off the cuff that I had the wonderful benefit when I was in grad school of participating and joining a support group. Now, in the beginning, much like you guys and kinship families we've talked to, I was resistant. I thought, I can overcome this challenge on my own. Maybe it was some health issues I was going through, and I thought, well, I'm doing okay when it comes to coping. I'm making forward progress. I don't need the support group, Maybe it's not worth my time. But I took the risk to step out, and I figured, what's the harm in trying it? And what I found, it really surprised me. You see, the value wasn't what they were teaching, and maybe the value wasn't what I needed to do to change. That for me, what I encountered was a family, a place to belong, people that understood. You see, one of the key challenges, no matter if it's kinship care, health issues, a mental illness, is that people, they feel like they're alone, that it's hard for them to relate, or they may think, well, people care for me, but they just don't get it. And so one of the key benefits of belonging to a support group is, like Tia Maria said, others that understand, that empathy, they've walked a mile in your shoes, and the encouragement. You see, as I went back time and time again, it became more about, well, how can I contribute? What do I have to give back to this group? How can I motivate others and encourage others? And so in the end, what helped me personally as a participant was changing my perspective, that I wasn't someone who was sick and needed to be healed or to be fixed, but I was a person of value that had something to give back, even though I was going through my own situation, even though I had treatments. But at the same time, it provided me the hope that there was purpose in the pain, and that in that community, we could grow and succeed together. And so with that said, I'd highly encourage each and every one of you, especially kinship families who are listening, to join a support group. We're going to talk about some of the opportunities later on. But let's get into the whole backpack thing. Why did I come up here with this backpack? Well, if it said that kinship care is a journey, not a destination, another key value that support groups provide is companionship for the journey, and maybe some tools that we can use to better overcome and to rise to the challenges, to stay refreshed, and maybe to help care for ourselves, to rest on this journey, and just the opportunity to celebrate the milestones together. So let's see. I have 2 backpacks here ahead of me, and while I'm fixing my mic, maybe you guys can guess which one looks more useful. for the journey. We have this Nat Geo style travel backpack, has lots of handy pouches, some containers. There's a lot of fun stuff you could do with that one. Or this one, slightly larger, also has some pouches, but if it were up to you, which backpack would you want to take on your journey? And it's okay to think about it.
Can I take both of them?
Oh, Tia Maria, yes, you're too wise. Maybe you've heard this story before. Okay, so yes, that it helps to be well equipped, and there's nothing wrong with carrying a little bit extra. And I want to share about a journey that I went on with a family member. So when I was teaching, I used to be an English teacher in Latin America, and my mother came to visit during one of my breaks. Now, her dream was to hike what they call the Inca Trail. It's a scenic trek through the mountains, and at the end, you arrive at one of the world wonders, Machu Picchu. And so she had trained for this hike. She's quite the avid walker. She leaves me in the dust. And so, the day came, we had our backpacks ready, we were looking forward to this journey, and, I was excited to get to be the travel guide for my mom, and we were going to do this together. Now, we had some help, we were part of a group, thank goodness, but unfortunately, life happened. We weren't expecting this, but Mom came down with some traveler sickness. Now, she is a fighter. She doesn't give up. She's overcome a lot of adversity. And when we were having a heart-to-heart about, what do we do? Do we cancel our trip? Do we turn back? She said, no, I'm just going to push through. We can make it. Now, one of Mom's positive qualities, for better or worse, is she's stubborn. She's tenacious. She doesn't give up. So because I loved her and because we were family, I stepped up. I said, Mom, the least I can do is to shoulder your load. Let me carry your backpack. And, it was a joy to be there for her. She had cared for me tirelessly when I was younger, and I thought, this is my opportunity to give back. But I didn't plan for something. You see, I'd only prepared to trek with one backpack, my backpack, which was nice and light, because I'd done this before. Now, Mom, she cares, and she packed everything but the kitchen sink. Lots of snacks and medical equipment, stuff for emergencies. And so on the one hand, I'm thankful because she is prepared. But on the other hand, there's another 20, 30, 40 pounds on my back. And we were above 10,000 feet. So I don't know if anyone has heard about the people that climb Everest or do mountain climbing. The higher you get, the harder it gets to breathe. And so mile after mile, the extra weight, it started to burden me. I became exhausted. I felt the pain in every step. But I told myself, I love her. She's recovering. She's trying to get well again so she can rejoin me, And I didn't think twice about it. But I gotta be honest, at the end of that first day, I was exhausted. I hit the tent and I passed out. Well, day 2 comes along, and by this time, I'm kind of hitting my stride, and I had talked to her, what can we take out of that backpack? We decided to empty some of the Gatorade, maybe throw out some of the snacks, and this helped. You see, my journey got a little bit more enjoyable. I was still shouldering some of her burden, but suddenly it didn't feel so heavy. And thankfully, there were some other Sherpas, Incan Sherpas along with us that they helped carry some essentials like her tent and the other heavier things. But the whole point being is having that conversation, it was a game changer for me when we decided, well, what can I leave by the side so we can enjoy the journey together? And we'll skip to the end. We got to Machu Picchu. It was a beautiful day. She had recovered enough where she could finally put her backpack on, and we had a great time together, taking pictures, making memories, and just celebrating how far we'd come as a family. Now, I'd like to think this relates to kinship care in that, it is a journey. You can celebrate the milestones together. You support one another. And when kinship care happens, much like my mom's traveler's illness, we didn't plan for it. It was unexpected, night and day difference, and we made some changes so that way we could overcome the challenges. Now, a few more examples. Let's see what was in our backpack. So the useful backpack, if I can open it up, has a few necessities for the journey. And when it comes to support groups, another key value is helping equip you with resources, information, support, and education. So, part of the support groups is they help rejuvenate us, when we're feeling tired, fatigued, maybe alone. Just that connection, getting the other perspective, hearing from families that have been there and done that. It's almost like taking a break to get a cup of cold water, refreshing on a hot day. Another value of support groups is they help orient us. You see, on our journeys, it helps to have a map. And like I shared a few days ago, one of the key parts of the map compared to a GPS, as I unfold this, is it gives you a big picture perspective. We'll see if we can find Machu Picchu somewhere. Okay, yes. So with this big picture perspective, sometimes families get caught in the weeds. It's easy to get down on ourselves, to maybe feel a little bit of remorse or pity, or to wonder about the what ifs. What if I were still grandma? What if I could enjoy my retirement? What if I wasn't having to balance my caregiving needs with my own health issues? The nice thing about the support group is you have other perspectives to, help you not be so concerned about the here and now. And also people that have been there, they have success stories. They can orient you to help you succeed on your journey. Next up, my favorite part of the support groups is the memories we make together along the journey. We're sharing these milestones, we're celebrating every victory. And my favorite part, personally, in being a facilitator, is just helping people make those lifelong connections, those friendships, the travel companions. We've had families, they have their light bulb moment, the aha moment. They say, I've been there, I understand you, let me help, let me bend down and help shoulder your burden or give you a hand. And, as the months go by, we make memories together. That we've heard of caregivers in our support group that they'll run into each other at the supermarket, maybe a sporting event or the circus, and other grandparents they've met up for lunch. And so it's very meaningful, once again, to have that community and just know that you're not alone. Now, finally, they can help protect us from some of the dangers if we're feeling stressed out or burnt out. You see, when you're in the mountains, that sunlight is harsh, and it helps to have some protection. Otherwise, as I found out the hard way, you get burned. So yeah, another key value of the relationships is it's protective against the stressors of life. Now, whether you're going through a hard time and you just need a little pick-me-up, or whether you're celebrating a victory and you can look forward to coming to that group and sharing. And, it brightens everyone's day to hear something encouraging. But it's also encouraging to be able to help someone and to know it's okay to receive care. We've all been there. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And who knows, maybe someday it'll be your turn, that when people care well for you, it equips you to care well, not only for the children that are in your care, but for yourself and for someone else who you meet that's walking in your shoes. Okay, so before we open up the bottom part, there's another example I want to get out of this backpack. You see, sometimes we bring things to group that we don't know. We have our blind spots, and maybe there's a burden or there's something heavy, whether it's grief, whether it's family dynamic issues that are getting in the way. And so this backpack, it's pretty heavy. And I might need a little bit of help to let something go. So I'm going to call Lisa up, that she's going to be my support group facilitator or member. And Lisa, if you'll do me a favor, I'm going to open up the bottom pouch and let everyone know, what do you see in there? Weight. Yeah, so there's a lot of unwelcome weight. Do you mind helping just pull one out? Yeah, so one of the values is that week after week or month after month, as we relate, as we connect, as we share, it's like taking a little bit of weight off on our journey. And so the key takeaway is that as you grow together, suddenly your load becomes lighter. Or maybe you become more agile, more capable of managing what other roles, responsibilities, and relationships you now have as a kinship caregiver. And let's say Lisa's a great facilitator. Maybe she's been encouraging me, she's empowering me, and I can decide to let something go. Now, suddenly, I feel capable of making those choices, of taking those steps to lighten my load a little bit. And wow, we're growing together, we're moving forward, this is feeling easier. I feel capable. I've got this. You know, when life happens, it's not the end of the world. And if it's overwhelming, I've got my facilitator to turn to. I've got my members of our little family in Kindred Spirits or your support group that I feel capable of handling some of the unexpected stressors and the challenges life throws at me. So together, Lisa, do you mind giving me a hand and we'll take out the final weight?
Yep.
Wonderful. So what do we notice about this backpack? It is so much lighter. Wow, I'm glad that I have Lisa, and I'm so thankful I chose to take the risk and join that support group, because now there's room for more essentials, for more things that will benefit me on my journey. Now, one last thing before I let you go back, Lisa.
Sure.
Go ahead and take that second backpack and tell me what you see inside. So it's pretty light.
Yeah, it is. It's like a pillow or a blanket.
Yes. So there is a pillow and nothing else. Yes. The final takeaway I want to leave with you guys before I move on to some of the facts and the research is that when you let that load go, and as you integrate into the support group, you realize it frees up so much space just to rest, to make self-care a priority, to care well for you so you can care for your children. And time again, a wise teacher who spoke earlier today has reminded us that you have to care well for yourself so you can care well for the kids. You know, we've often heard about the airline policy, put your mask on first before assisting anyone else. And belonging to a support group, they help make this a habit, a lifestyle, that when you're prioritizing being cared for, receiving care, and making care a daily habit, a rhythm, it allows you to more effortlessly continue caring for the children. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Okay. Now, a few quick reasons from the experts on why support groups are beneficial. They line up pretty well with our mission as Pennsylvania King Connector, and that's what really surprised me when I went into the research, is that it's basic. The support group can help provide access to resources, information about key systems and supports that will benefit families that maybe you guys weren't aware of. Second, the support, enough said. Having that community is vital. And my favorite part is the education. So we help families grow in different topic areas. In our support group, Kindred Spirits, we've shown some of Dr. Crumbly's trainings. We've had guest speakers, especially when it came to navigating child welfare or the legal system. And so in addition to doing life together, you can really benefit through the education that these groups provide. Once again, you don't have to do it alone. You're not an island. There is support out there. But I encourage you to take that first step, to take the risk and just go ahead and sign up. Now, every group might not be the perfect fit for you, but if you don't give up, don't worry. There's other options out there. We usually encourage people to start with their local groups. There's groups in the greater Philadelphia area. There's groups in northeastern Pennsylvania. There's groups around Pittsburgh. And I have some friends, colleagues I should say, that have groups in the greater Harrisburg area in south central Pennsylvania. So your first step is to connect in person or look for a group near you. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe we live out in the boondocks, or, Pennsylvania's a big state. What do I do if there's not a group near me? Now, thankfully, we have the answer for you. At Pennsylvania King Connector, we offer a group called Kindred Spirits. You can meet virtually on Zoom to still have the opportunity to make those connections with families. Families that are like you, grandparents. Maybe they're single grandparents, maybe they're retired, maybe they're working families. But the whole point is that that community exists, that they understand you. And you don't even have to leave the comfort of your own home. For all we care, you could show up in your pajamas and just keep the camera off. So I'd like to say there's really no excuse for not joining a group. Now, you're welcome to do it in your own time, but just know support is available. Now, if you decide and say, once you decide to join the group, I want to equip you to be a productive or, a helpful group member. So when it comes to support groups, empathy is key. And we all think that we're great at empathy. We have that intuitive empathy, especially if you've lived it, you understand it. Now, communicating the empathy, that can be the challenge. There's a couple types of personalities in groups, and we won't get into all of them, but first of all, you have the overshare. Either they're excited, they found, new friends, and they're loving their time in the limelight, making it all about them and their journey. Now, don't worry, that's normal. We like to be generous and gracious when people first join by giving them plenty of time just to tell their story and to make those connections. But we do ask for members who have maybe participated a little bit longer that they're patient, that they're understanding, and they're good listeners as new members integrate. Now, they told us in grad school that if you're the one doing most of the talking, maybe that's not the right thing to do in therapy or in groups. So it's okay to share. You'll get your 5, 15, or half an hour of time to relate, but just be kind and understand that this is everyone's group, which for the most part, our group has done a wonderful job in that. People are sensitive, they're welcoming, there's a good balance. We don't have people kind of taking over. But yes, step 1 to being a good group member is to share the spotlight and to listen well. Now, when it comes to listening well, we like to talk about this drive-through technique, sometimes called listen, understand, and validate. I gotta share with you guys, I have a weakness or a problem. I'm terrible at ordering in drive-thrus. See, when it's me alone, no big deal. I ask for my sandwich and fries, or my favorite, Chick-fil-A, that spicy chicken deluxe. And usually, I just kind of check out because the workers, they're good at their job, they're great listeners, and I trust that when I pull up to the window, I'll get my food. But in my family, there's a bit of a problem that my wife, she's wonderful, she's intelligent, she's kind, but English isn't her first language. And so when we go to a drive-thru together, she'll communicate with them, and sometimes, as they're repeating back the order, they make a few mistakes. You see, this is why I'm so thankful that they're reflecting, they're summarizing what they heard, and they're asking, was that right? Or do I need to make an adjustment? Did I understand you? Now, my mistake is that since I'm so used to checking out, I'll just go ahead and say okay, and I've gotten in some hot water that will get into the window, and they forgot my wife's sandwich, and oh no. Now, luckily, I'd give her mine and just, make something when I get home, but if only I had been good at empathizing and I was listening and I was helping them or reflecting what they're saying. So the key thing in support groups, much like a drive-thru, you're not passing a value judgment. You're not saying, really, you went for the supersized fry? Might want to do the salad next time. Or you're just repeating the content to make sure you understood, and this allows people to feel heard. Now, another thing when it comes to empathizing well, you want to meet people where they're at. You don't want to go too deep and make them uncomfortable, but at the same time, you want to reflect what they said without missing the mark, that if they go deep, it's okay to follow them, to meet them where they are. Another one of my friends, someone I really respect in the kinship space, Howard Grossman, he's a fellow support group leader. Now, he loves to play tennis. So when we meet up, I'll ask him about his tennis matches, and, he gives me the latest details. And when I was younger, my grandfather taught me to play a little bit. Now, my grandfather, he was so caring. As I was learning, he met me where I was at, which means he didn't ace me. He wasn't smashing all the time. I was just trying to keep that ball in the court, and, bless him for humbling himself and having the patience just to walk with me as I learned. Now, as I grew older, it was my turn to return the favor. You see, he started having some health issues. He wasn't as fast as he used to be. And even though I might have been a little bit ornery in middle school and I got an ace in just to show I could, after a while I realized it's a lot more fun if I just go at his pace, feed the ball right to him, and we can have a good, gentle match. Now, empathy is similar in that if someone, starts off kind of tentative, they're just seeing, can I trust you, They want to know that it's a safe space, which more often than not it is in a group, but when you're reflecting the content, you don't want to psychoanalyze or to read into the situation. It's okay just to repeat back what they said without getting into the feelings. Now, the more they share their feelings, the more you have the opportunity to go ahead and kind of go there with them. But we're not reading between the lines too much, and you don't have to play therapist. You know, one of the key values is just letting them talk about their journey, letting them share their story. What really surprised me as a facilitator is that, one, my group is wonderful. They do most of the work for me. But two, I'm really not even having to do therapy. I'm mostly just encouraging them, kind of redirecting the conversation, and being a cheerleader to motivate them and recognize or draw out that potential, the success, the value that they already hold. And so one of my great joys in being a facilitator is just seeing the group step up and follow that pattern. They've known each other, they've grown together, and they've bonded to the point where they're starting to feel empowered and comfortable being the leader, that they're taking initiative to encourage, to reflect, to guide. And so I just get to kind of step back and enjoy the process. Now, in summary, the value of joining a support group: empathy, people that understand your journey, your story. They can draw near to you to encourage you. They can celebrate the victories in life while at the same time being patient and giving grace for the challenges. Also, it helps you understand, what were some of the things I brought to group that are weighing me down, and what can I let go of so I can just enjoy life, enjoy the journey of kinship care, and most importantly, enjoy those relationships you have, whether it's with the grandchildren, whether it's with families you meet in group, or, maybe even your healing relationships with the birth parents, the family of origin, as Dr. Crumbley talked about. That ideally, we'd love to see each and every one of you either continue participating in a group or joining a group so you can benefit from some of these key advantages. And it's okay, just come as you are, be yourself, you're welcome. Now, does anyone have questions or anything else you'd like to know about support groups?
Alex, can you just tell people when Kindred Spirits meets?
Sure. So our group, Kindred Spirits, meets once a month on the first Thursday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Now, if anyone wants, they're always welcome to reach out to us. We do have a warm line to offer individual support on a day-to-day basis for maybe some of the days when life happens and you just want someone to listen and support and help guide you. Now, that number would be 866-546-2111.
Okay, if there aren't any questions, I think we should take like a 5-minute bio break. So everybody come back in 5 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next up is our Ask a Navigator segment, and our navigators will share and answer the top questions that caregivers ask us when they call our support line. So I'm thrilled to introduce our three outstanding navigators. First, Lisa Barnelli, Alex Masdom, who you've seen before, and Jill Boblick.
Okay, sure, I'll start. So we, like Tia Maria said, we will get phone calls throughout the day, and a lot of questions are very similar. So what we did was we got together and we came up with a few of the most common questions that caregivers will call and ask. So the first one is, are there any programs that provide free childcare in my area or neighborhood? This is a really difficult question because we are not always able to give the answers that our caregivers want to hear. Childcare is a tough one, so oftentimes we will direct our caregivers to call Childcare Works. And with Childcare Works, that is, they have guidelines that they must follow. So caregivers must work, I believe it's 20 hours a week. You know, they take a look at their income. They often have their own requirements for caregivers. So I always recommend that caregivers contact early intervention for early Head Start. So early Head Start is infant to age 3, and oftentimes caregivers will qualify for free child care through early Head Start. But they will screen you when you call. They have a variety of questions that they will ask, and oftentimes they are able to offer suggestions on places to call, local support groups who may be able to provide support. But specifically, I always encourage our callers to connect with local churches. Often churches will have their own foster parent support groups who will offer childcare in an emergency, or if you want to go to the grocery store. But more specifically, I always try to listen and understand the need behind the question. And if there are families who are in crisis, I always encourage them to contact Safe Families, who will offer a respite in an emergency. Or if you're a York County resident, I offer the Lehman Center, who offers a 24-hour crisis nursery for families who are in situations where circumstances don't always allow the children to be present with the caregiver. So that, I mean, I'm not sure if you guys have anything else to offer. We just normally, what I do is just go down my list and think of supports that I offer.
Wonderful, Jill. I'll go for the next one. So who do I contact to get a replacement birth certificate? This can be difficult as well because of the required documents. So the technical answer is Vital Records. You can go to the Department of Health's website and it'll direct you to Vital Records for a replacement birth certificate. However, because of informal kinship families' unique situation where there's often a lack of documentation, that in the past has presented problems. But I know that we have in the past, at least I know that I have, contacted Vital Records, and they are often willing to accept some more simple documents, such as something that's notarized. If you have a CYS worker, oftentimes they'll take a letter describing that you are caring for that child. So what you would do is you can apply online, and that's $10 for the birth certificate online, plus a $2 processing fee. I believe that's the cost. But you can also mail in your application. I have found, unfortunately, that it's very difficult to get through. But if you keep trying and if you have questions, you can always call Vital Records or call the Department of Health's phone number, and they actually are super helpful. And that can all be found on their website. And unfortunately, I did not write that down, but I'd be more than happy to get that information if anybody needed it. They can call our helpline.
Thank you, Lisa. Sure. So sometimes families call our warm line and they ask about tangibles. So for example, where can I get a car seat? How can I get a crib for my grandson or granddaughter that they just came into care and they're lacking some of those daily essentials? Now, there's a handful of programs out there. It depends on where you're located in Pennsylvania, that a lot of them serve kind of a county or maybe a town or have a service area. So for example, in Philadelphia, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, they have a wonderful program where they provide car seats to families free of charge. Now, there's other programs around the state, usually sponsored by the community action agencies, that they have loaner programs. So maybe a family has used a car seat and their children grow up or they've outgrown the seat. These organizations can be contacted in order to request borrowing the car seat for a certain amount of time while your children are at the age where they need the car seat. Once again, usually free of charge. Now, if that doesn't work out, there's another wonderful organization that Lisa brought to our attention, the Keystone Family Alliance. Now, it's not in every county yet, but it's beautiful. It's crowdfunding, and people volunteer to step up when a need is posted. So whether it's a bed or a car seat or other tangible needs, it's okay to reach out to us, especially on the warm line, and we can help connect you to some of these resources. And for example, with the Family Alliance, you go ahead and share that need, and then other families in your community that care will step up to provide some of these items.
Our next question is, what are the housing requirements for my grandchildren? Do they need separate bedrooms? So earlier, one of our caregivers talked about being a formal kinship home. So formal kinship care is when the kiddos become dependent of the court. And so when that happens, children and youth will step in and they have requirements for kinship parents to follow in order to meet the regulations of the Department of Human Services. So in that situation, you're going to have a caseworker come into your home and they may talk about bedrooms, for instance. So children who are 5 years of age and of opposite sex cannot share a bedroom if you are considered a formal kinship home. They will have a checklist of items such as smoke detectors and plugs that need to be covered. Your well water will need to be tested. There's a whole checklist that a caseworker will come into your home if you are labeled a formal kinship home that will be a little bit different than if you are an informal kinship home. An informal kinship home just means that you have gained that responsibility to take on that child and to obtain whatever requirements you are asked by the county. So in that circumstance, there really are no rules regarding bedrooms. I always encourage our callers to use best practice. So if you are going to have children who are the opposite sex share a bedroom, you want to look at their background. You want to make sure there's no abuse. You want to make sure that they're going to be safe. So when looking at bedroom situations, you want to look at the safest possible setup for that child. So every circumstance is different, and that's what I always try to talk to our callers about. Every individual circumstance is different. Every story is different. And so when families come to us and ask us specific questions, we try to look at where they are, where they're coming from, what the kiddos' backgrounds are, and then if they are formal, we always encourage them to reach out to their caseworkers and ask for specific guidelines, because every county is also very different in what they will allow children to sleep in.
So the next one that I have is how do I get my grandchildren or my family members Social Security? So that's pretty cut and dry, because in order to get a child Social Security, there's two different scenarios. One, they have to have a disability that's documented. Number two, they would be getting survivor's benefits if their parent, one of their parents or both of their parents in some cases, were deceased. So those are the only two situations. A grandparent just can't say, oh, I'm going to call Social Security and see if I can get, some funds for my grandchildren. If your grandchild has a disability, or if they deserve survivor's benefits. You can do it online. I know for the children, for SSI, if they're disabled, you can start it online, but a lot of what you're going to go through is going to be with a representative, and they will set that up with you. So you'll have a specific time that they're going to call, and they're going to say, hey, Miss Smith, we're going to call you at 10 a.m. I've been with families where it's actually lasted almost 2 hours. But that's when there are several children involved, so it may not take quite that long. But so they have to be disabled, or their parents, one or the other, or both, would need to be deceased. Those are the only scenarios where you could get your grandchildren or your little family members' Social Security.
So another question we get asked sometimes on the warm line is along the lines of, my children, the birth parents, aren't getting along with me. They're causing difficulties, they're going against what I say in kinship care, or sometimes they're unavailable. What can I do as a grandparent to make things better? Now, this one is difficult, and honestly, Dr. Crumbly, this could probably be another talk on kinship family dynamics. See, there's no easy answer, but to start off with, you want to de-escalate. Communicate that you are there to care, that you're not against them, and that you want to bury the hatchet. That you start by listening well and showing that you're able to care, and that it's not you against them, it's working together collaboratively for the benefit and the well-being of the children. And unfortunately, maybe sometimes parents aren't in the right space, whether it's, they're going through grief or loss, maybe it's a substance issue, maybe it's a mental health issue that they're not able to have a healthy and a productive conversation. In those type of situations, once you've tried to make things better, whether it's offering the olive branch of peace, whether it's listening well, whether it's being empathetic, and they're still being very antagonistic, we'd encourage families, and I learned this from one of my support group members, it's okay to create some space as a healthy boundary. That, if they're not being kind, if they're threatening the children, or even if you as a caregiver feel threatened, it's okay to back up and to maybe create some distance or cut off communication for a short amount of time. Set some boundaries about, if we can't speak respectfully, if you can't say anything nice, then I prefer just to, I'm taking the lead, I'm caring well for your daughter, your son, and you can trust me. But we have to be able to trust you as well to be a part of this family unit and caregiving. It's a hard conversation to have, but at the end of the day, you have to do what is right to put the children's needs first above the birth parents. So we just encourage you guys to hang in there, lead with love, lead with empathy, but set boundaries if you have to.
Okay, thank you for the sample questions. Does anybody in the audience have any questions for our navigators? Okay, I think we will go on to the next segment then.
Next.
Okay, as we come to a close, I want to thank our online streamers for attending this Empowering Kinship Families event brought to you by PA Kin Connector and the Office of Children, Youth, and Families. We hope that you gained a lot of information from Dr. Crumley's training about kinship family dynamics. We hope from Alex that you learned about the value of support groups, and we encourage you to join one if you aren't already a member. And then finally, we hope you got a good sample of what the kinds of questions that we get for our navigators. You can see we answer a variety of questions. Even though we technically service Pennsylvania, we get calls from across the country and sometimes from other parts of the world. So, and they can handle them all. So you'll be in good hands if you make a call to our support line. Now, so for the streamers, don't sign off yet because we have a remarkable video with 2 kinship caregivers who will tell you their inspirational story. Thank you again for coming, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. For the people here, we are going to break for lunch. So thank you.
Welcome to Kindred Voices, a podcast that provides information and inspiration to kinship families.
So today we are so excited to have a kinship caregiver on the show. So welcome to Kindred Voices.
Then B could have been returned to her. And that just was not satisfactory to us. That just was not going to happen.
And we are so grateful to have you here. And tell us a little bit about what's keeping you busy these days.
What keeps me really busy these days is my now 12-year-old granddaughter that moved in with me back in December of 2021.
Speaking of that, tell us a little bit about how did you start your kinship journey? Like, how did you start being a grandparent raising a granddaughter?
Well, my journey started with a phone call from a Lawrence Township police officer. He told me that a complaint had been lodged against my now ex-daughter-in-law because Brianna had called her half-sister and was crying and throwing up. She was hungry. She was scared, and she was totally incapable of getting a hold of her mother. Her mother would not answer her. So her half-sister notified her father, and he called the police department, in which they called me. So in the meantime, I was able to contact her father, Jerry, which is my son, and he lives in town since they broke up in 2018, and as I said, has since divorced. So we went to Clearfield, only to find 3 police officers there and an advocate from Clearfield's Child Services. We found out later that her mother had tested positive for methamphetamines and also for alcohol that night.
So what would you say has been the most challenging aspect of being a kinship caregiver for you?
Well, for us, there's been several. When B first came down, of course, she had PTSD really bad. And she had, since we got custody, we were able to get a counselor right away for her. And that counselor has helped her learn to deal with her mother's abandonment. And she's also taught her how to cope with the adjustments and to understand what happened and why it happened. Another thing for me has been a major adjustment. I was retired for 6 years before she came. So with a child now in my home, here I am, a senior citizen at 69 years old, raising another child. But, you know, it was okay because it needed to be done. She needs to know she's safe, she's secure, and she is with me, and she knows that. And it was an adjustment for her also to learn to live with an older person instead of one of her parents. She spends a lot of time with her dad, and she loves being with her dad. And but she does feel most secure here with me at this time yet.
So when you decided that you were going to take custody of her, did you have any doubts?
Not an ounce. The minute that Child Services showed up in my home, and I was a single parent. I raised my 2 kids by myself. I never had Child Services in my home. And the next day, Clearfield Child Services was sitting in my dining room. But no, there was not an ounce on my part, my son's part, my daughter, or my other grandson. We all said if she couldn't come here to live, one of them were going to take her.
What has been the most rewarding aspect of being a kinship caregiver to your granddaughter?
Okay, we've had several. B has a learning disability. And it was not addressed early in her life. And then, of course, COVID hit. And then the schools closed down. And then there was rotational schools level. So with us and with the Tyrone School District, and B has really, really worked hard. She was able to receive the Rising Star Award. Can you see that okay?
Yes, that's beautiful. Oh my
Oh,
goodness, that's awesome.
Yep, it certainly was. And that was for last year, for 2022 to 2023. And she just, she's worked very hard. And another thing we have noticed, she is starting to show her love more. When she first came down, man, you couldn't touch her. You couldn't even tell her I love you without her turning around and walking away from you. And that, of course, is because of her PTSD and because of the abandonment. But we have noticed, I have noticed, she is letting me hug her. We play with each other. We tease each other. Just things that she was not able to do before. And just the other week, we were at a craft show, and she actually took my hand, which she had been doing more, but she took her aunt's hand, and we walked for about a block that way. And Mindy, she looked over Bee's head at me like, I said, go back, go back. And she was very shocked. She was too, that she is actually starting to show more and more of her affection for us.
okay, wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful to hear that she's blossoming like that. What would you have made being a kinship caregiver easier for you?
Some classes on helping the grandparent to readjust to a child moving in. I don't know if that's possible, but it might be helpful. But I am a little more fortunate than a lot of our people because she's older. So we can talk.
She said, would you be down to adopt this baby because nobody else can take in another child? The other option was her going into foster care like the one before her, and that just didn't make me comfortable, which is just a really interesting part of the whole story. But because of how the paperwork went, I forgot if it's unofficial or official, whichever one is not allowed. That's what I technically am.
The type of kinship care that you're providing, which is called informal, which means you're not licensed, that's actually the overwhelming majority of kinship care. Most people who are doing kinship care aren't licensed. So
Okay.
you're not the exception. And so, and our organization was specifically created to service you because you're the informal, unlicensed kinship caregivers are the ones who don't get a lot of help, right? Because they're not part of the system. So
Right.
we're here for you. So we really want to hear your story because it's a story that's often not heard. So Chanel, tell us, how did you start your kinship journey? What facilitated that for you?
So around let's say November, I have a close friend of the family who was pregnant with her 5th child. Her previous 4 children are one is with a cousin, one is with my cousin and her family, and they're raising him, and the other 2 are with the grandmother, and then another one is with the foster family. If I'm able to open my home and my heart, then if that's what is meant for me and my destiny, then I'm like, let's do it. Let's roll with it. She was born on New Year's Eve. So from November to December, it was like, baby is coming. So it was a very fast process. But the birth mother, ended up getting a little, cold feet essentially with that. And then we kind of just stepped back. And she's like, because of the mother, I don't want to say struggling, but she's experiencing in the space with substance abuse. So the baby could not leave the hospital with her, period. So in order for that to happen, again, like I said, we signed a safety plan for her to be in my care. and to take care of her so we could actually leave the hospital. Navigating a lot of these different spaces to try to get some type of assistance or support in moving forward now with this new little human in my life. You know, like I said, it was a month, so I wasn't prepared as if I had like 9 months to prepare for a baby, you know? So that has I would probably say definitely the most difficult part. The social worker who we worked with initially, she wasn't that supportive in the whole process. It was essentially like, okay, the paper signed, this is the deal. Now I'm about to kind of like peace out. And I basically really just kind of got bounced around to different numbers until I found Lisa at Kin Connector. And y'all, I'm about to cry because I absolutely love I love Lisa. Situation was I got denied for everything, food stamps, daycare voucher, because they said I made too much. Because again, they go by how much you make before taxes, before everything comes out. So according to that, I made too much to apply to receive anything. So I was telling Lisa my story and she's like, yeah, that sucks. Unfortunately, you are the common denominator, unfortunately, in these situations. And she reached out to the social worker, spoke with the social worker, and then she confirmed that through her, because it was, I guess you said, like an informal situation, this little trick up her sleeve where she told me that I could apply for a child-only TANF. They would go by the baby's income and not my income. And we got it. She, you know, she sent emails on our behalf. She worked so hard for us to get that. And if it wasn't for that, then it's already tough. And I told her, you know, it's tough. I'm not gonna lie, but we're gonna be abundant. We're gonna come through this 100%. I know that. It's just in this time of transition and everything being new, I just didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. And because we were approved for the child-only TANF, we were then allowed to get WIC. So that helped a lot, because WIC would have denied me. They actually denied me initially until they went into the system and saw that we were receiving the TANF. So because we received TANF, we just automatically get the WIC. And that helped so much because she's on a special formula that was costing me $50 a can. And that's basically like 2 to 3 cans a week. So that was tearing me up. So taking that off my plate is like a whoo, you know. And again, I really credit a lot of that to, you know, to Lisa working so hard again on my behalf.
Tell us what has been the most rewarding aspect of being a kinship caregiver.
My baby is just, she came from heaven and she's the perfect gift, you know. So all of the sacrifice that I go through, she teaches me so much. She's grown me so much. She is my ultimate reward in anything and every way.
What would have made being a kinship caregiver easier for you?
If I really knew about Kinship Connector from the beginning, like I said, I kind of just was bounced around and Googling and finding that I eventually just fell into Kinship Connector. So if something was just like, oh, hey, yeah, Kinship Connector, go straight to this. You know, this is, you know, so awareness, more of awareness of Kinship Connector and what you guys do or provide would have been amazing from the jump. It would have saved a lot of headache and frustrations.
Based on your experience, what is the one thing kinship caregivers should know?
You're not alone in this situation. You're not out there by yourself. There is so many parents and grandparents, and I never even paid any attention to what happened to this family. But there are so many grandparents out there raising their grandchildren and are a lot older than I am. But the thing is, these children need to be taken in. They need to be loved. They need to be well tended to and cared for, and know that they're safe and know that they're worthy of love, so that maybe they can grow into a loving, caring, productive adult in hopes that they can stop this vicious cycle.
Present yourself, the babies, the children, young adults, however old, you know, the child may be, is always worth it. When Spirit rewards those that does for the children.
Based on your experience, what is the one thing kinship caregivers should do?
advocate. Advocate as best as you can for yourself, for the child, for the situation. You know, I believe that because if more people came up and said, this is crazy that I can't get services, because why should my baby have to go into foster care and be a part of the system and carry around that stigma and that energy of being in that, for me to be able to receive resources, to be able to really move through with things with her? Why do I have to not be working basically and to be able to receive any type of benefits? It feels like it's this damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. And I just don't really think that's fair for people who want to stand up, want to do, want to help, want to be of service. And it's almost as if you are just, it's like you suffer consequences for it. And that just doesn't, that really pushes people, I believe, will push people away from wanting to help and wanting to do more, because they feel like, oh, well, I'm gonna go broke trying to raise this child, or I can't, you know. And I know, unfortunately, that stops people from being able to move forward and help these babies. And unfortunately, now they're in the system, and that's a whole nother situation.
So the main thing is to go to an attorney, find out what your rights are, find out what the process will be. There are some programs that could help the person file the paperwork. We couldn't wait. We needed emergency custody of her so she could not go back to her mother.
What was your experience like with Pennsylvania King Connector?
It has been wonderful. When this all happened, I started looking for help. Maybe like a support group or something like that. And with researching, your website came up. And I looked at some of the things. So I believe, if I remember correctly, is I sent an email saying, you know, what are you guys all about? And someone got back to me, and then Alex got involved. And I know one of the programs you guys have is something I was able to use because I am a senior citizen. And I was able, under the guidelines, the income guidelines, I was able to get a program through Department of Aging that helps me pay for her expenses. It helps me pay for her school clothes. It paid for the bus trips. And I'll tell you, that has been a true blessing. The other thing has been the support group. Alex and his support group has just been fabulous.
I can't say it enough. Lisa is amazing. She's passionate. She cares about what she does. She cares about these babies. She cares about making a difference. She cares about ending this situation within the system that makes it so hard for people to try to, you know, be there and be of support. And it's very rare that you find that in these type of agencies and organizations, because unfortunately people can get very burnt out, frustrated with how things are. So to find someone willing to go the extra yard, willing to go hard, and like, I'm not even technically one of her, like, on her caseload, but yet she's still like, no, I know I can do something. I know it is. And I appreciate that always, and forever. That really means a lot to me.
I know Bee's situation was caught early, and only because she finally, I personally think, she hasn't admitted, but I personally think she just got fed up with it and got tired of dealing with everything. And she stood up for herself that night. And she knew her dad and I would be there, and we were there. And as I told her mother, you may be a victim, but she will be a survivor.
And that is an inspiration and to share with others that, you know, this is not the end of the story.
One thing that you can also do to help with that is, you know, be a voice with your legislators, because the legislators are the ones who can pass the laws that will allow kinship caregivers to get, you know, more assistance. So, you know, if you know who they are, like, be loud. Like, that is how a difference happens. Most of us, I was raised by my great-grandmother. Candy was raised by her grandmother. Another person in the organization was raised by his grandmother. So we have personal experience with this, which is why we really are, like I said, committed to helping the families. And, you know, kind of a calling for us.
Yes, Shay. Yes, very much. It shows that, and I appreciate that again, because you don't feel that all the other calls I had with people, they're just over it. They don't want to listen to you. They rushing you off the phone, so it's comforting to feel that type of support when you're going through type of things from a total stranger, so I thank you guys for even having this space and having this organization and doing the work that you guys do. So thank you.